In London, on the brisk morning of February 11th, 2026, a wave of unprecedented transparency rippled through the monarchy as Prince William made a bold and rare public declaration. The heir apparent confronted international scrutiny head-on, affirming that the British royal family is fully cooperating with the United States Internal Revenue Service, IRS, in its ongoing investigation of the Archewell Foundation and related commercial ventures. This moment wasn't just ceremonial. It was a direct, high-stakes assertion of accountability that sent shockwaves through both media and diplomatic circles. Standing on the south steps of Marlborough House at exactly 10 a.m., William addressed a global press corps with measured authority, a calm legal clarity, and a strategic resolve that left no room for doubt. "Let no one mistake silence for consent," he declared, his voice carrying across the gathered journalists. "The Crown does not endorse, fund, or associate itself with the Archewell Foundation or any of its subsidiaries." Every word was precise, every pause deliberate, signalling that the monarchy was drawing a firm line between constitutional duty and private enterprise. This public statement marked a rare constitutional intervention by the heir apparent, placing him not just as a future king, but as a guardian of the institution's present integrity. It directly addressed swirling speculation about the monarchy's historical or symbolic connections to Archewell, the embattled non-profit launched by Prince Harry and largely managed by Meghan Markle. The IRS's formal inquiry, initiated on February 9, 2026, sent shockwaves through Buckingham Palace, the Treasury, and the Royal Trust, demanding clarification on three crucial points: whether any British royal entity had ever financially or symbolically endorsed Archewell, whether royal titles or insignia were used in US-based ventures without authorization, and whether there was any deliberate misrepresentation of royal support in US tax filings and fundraising campaigns. The inquiry was ignited by a controversial 2023 quote from Meghan Markle at the Aspen Impact Forum, in which she stated, "Archewell represents not just our family, but a legacy of service that the Crown instilled in us." US regulators flagged the remark as potentially misleading, triggering a detailed forensic review of Archewell's tax filings, fundraising statements, and brand promotions, particularly the high-profile luxury lifestyle brand As Ever, launched by Meghan in 2024. Red flags immediately arose over the use of royal terminology and stylized emblems that bore a striking resemblance to official British monarchical assets, raising questions about the intent behind branding and marketing strategies. Within 48 hours of receiving the IRS inquiry, Sir George, chair of the Royal Trust, authorized a high-level digital summit between the IRS International Tax Crimes Unit and senior palace legal and financial officers. Held on February 14th, the session delivered rapid institutional disclosures. No sovereign grant funds, charitable endowments, or palace stipends had ever been allocated to Archewell. Internal records from the Royal Household Communications Office documented repeated warnings in May and September 2024 regarding unauthorized use of royal imagery in As Ever packaging and promotional materials. Legal files confirmed that no licensing or endorsement rights were ever granted to Archewell or any US-based entities using the Duke or Duchess of Sussex titles for commercial purposes. Sources say the IRS was astonished by the thoroughness and speed of compliance, describing it as the most candid cross-border non-profit audit collaboration we've ever seen from a historical institution. On February 16th, the scrutiny intensified with a confidential in-person summit at Clarence House. Prince William met with Peter Halloran, Senior Director for International Tax Crimes at the IRS, for a session that lasted just under 2 hours. This was far from ceremonial. The discussions were operational and precise. William was joined by the palace's chief counsel, the Royal Trust's Director of Institutional Ethics, and a senior Treasury representative. US Embassy legal liaisons and IRS financial compliance auditors were present, signaling the gravity of the investigation. The agenda was tight and exhaustive. improper use of the Duchess of Sussex title in US tax filings, false implications of royal endorsement in charitable solicitations, commercial packaging that mimicked royal aesthetics, historical funding relationships with Archewell, diplomatic representations by the Sussexes abroad, and the full communications record between the palace and Sussex representatives from 2021 to 2025. William reportedly handled the interrogation with unwavering composure, his responses firm, articulate, and strategically unflinching. On questions regarding reputational harm to the Crown, he responded, "The royal family cannot be reduced to a marketing motif. We are stewards of a constitutional legacy, not participants in a narrative crafted for private monetization." His statement echoed lessons consistently reinforced by Queen Elizabeth II and the late Prince Philip. Service is duty, not branding, and the Crown's legitimacy must never be commodified. The decision to deliver a public statement on February 11th, ahead of the IRS audit, was strategic. Palace aides confirmed that the timing was meant to achieve three outcomes: reassure UK taxpayers and Commonwealth nations that the monarchy has no financial or symbolic links to Archewell, clarify the Crown's institutional position before US legal proceedings, and demonstrate proactive international cooperation. William's speech established three central assertions, now codified as palace policy. No member of the royal family, past or present, may imply royal endorsement for private commercial purposes. Ethical neutrality is essential, keeping the monarchy constitutionally non-partisan, and the Crown retains the right to legally and reputationally disavow any private ventures exploiting royal association. Hours later, these principles were formally documented in a release titled Statement of Institutional Separation and promptly distributed to non-profit regulators, branding watchdogs, and charity commissions across the US, UK, and Canada. The headlines went global. The Guardian ran, "Williams's royal firewall, the Crown draws the line on Archewell." The Times proclaimed, "From trust to truth." The New York Times highlighted a future king facing a present reckoning, framing William's intervention as a decisive moment in royal accountability. Sources confirmed that King Charles had provided full consent in principle to pursue legal reviews of Sussex titles if misuse were substantiated, reinforcing the Crown's commitment to its constitutional boundaries. Meanwhile, the IRS investigation into Archewell's finances revealed alarming irregularities. According to 2024 filings, total donations plummeted to $2.10 million from $5.3 million in 2023, while total expenses reached $5.10 million. Charitable grants accounted for only $1.25 million, administrative and security costs for $2.9 million, meaning over 75% of the foundation's budget went to overhead, not philanthropy. The foundation employed only 2 full-time staffers, who together received nearly $1 million in compensation, despite lacking executive-level non-profit management experience. Regulators noted that the spending patterns resembled a private enterprise more than a non-profit, intensifying concerns over misappropriation and operational inefficiency. But the most explosive findings emerged from Meghan Markle's luxury brand, As Ever. Launched with a values-driven lifestyle image in 2024, the brand included fruit preserves, candles, herbal teas, and decorative items, all designed with stylized crowns, ceremonial fonts, matching royal stationery, and slogans such as "By Royal Ritual" and "Inspired by Legacy." Critics quickly warned that the branding closely mimicked Windsor ceremonial packaging. Initial press claimed a sellout launch, but a forensic glitch revealed over $23 million in unsold stock sitting in North American warehouses, including 137,455 fruit preserve boxes, 44,000 jars of Windsor orange marmalade, 80,000 floral sachets, and assorted candles and teas. Between January 30 to 31, 2026, the brand sold only 26 items despite a birthday promotion tied to Meghan herself. An IRS legal memo noted that, as Ever's June 2025 restructuring under another non-profit umbrella was likely a deliberate attempt to dodge public financial scrutiny amid declining donations and intense media pressure. The timing suggested evasion rather than operational efficiency, consistent with patterns regulators associate with concealing structural deficiencies. The need for the British royal family to formally disassociate from Archewell became urgent. William's February 11th statement did more than clarify the palace position. It insulated the monarchy from what US regulators now describe as a strategic collapse of donor and consumer trust. Following the forensic revelations about Archewell Foundation and as Ever's financial and operational turbulence, regulatory scrutiny has escalated into an aggressive, high-intensity phase. The United States Internal Revenue Service had confirmed key financial inconsistencies and had now escalated its scrutiny, placing both Archewell and Meghan Markle's lifestyle venture, as ever, under active fraud review. At the centre of this legal storm were two interconnected controversies that had rattled both sides of the Atlantic: the unauthorised use of royal titles for commercial and charitable leverage, and deliberate brand misrepresentation designed to mislead both consumers and donors. These revelations came in the immediate aftermath of Prince William's commanding public declaration on February 11th, a statement that had set the tone for an unprecedented royal transparency campaign. In swift response, the Royal Trust's legal team issued a formal cease and desist order to Evermark Collective Incorporated, the Delaware-registered parent company behind Meghan Markle's lifestyle brand. The notice cited serious violations, including packaging and promotional language that closely mimicked the visual identity of official British royal giftware. Unauthorised phrases such as Windsor Blend, by Royal Ritual, and Legacy Inspired were being used in a manner that suggested symbolic weight and royal approval, alongside stylized crowns, serif fonts long associated with Buckingham Palace, and traditional colour palettes of royal blue and gold, historically reserved for monarchical representation. At the same time, the royal household's legal advisers moved decisively to issue a reputational disavow of Archewell, submitting updated statements to international regulators and charity registries in the US, UK, and Canada. The documents made clear that no official endorsement had ever been granted, whether explicit or implied, and that no royal title had been authorised for use in tax filings, donation appeals, or any branded content. Repeated requests to halt these practices had been ignored, partially implemented, or selectively interpreted, prompting a swift update to the Royal Trust's internal compliance charter. New policies emphasised that any use of titles, honorifics, or ceremonial ranks in connection with fundraising, product sales, or media appearances now required pre-clearance through the Lord Chamberlain's office. Any reference to the Crown, Royal Service, or Legacy, as well as visual imagery evocative of Windsor emblems, had to be documented and disclosed fully before release. Businesses or foundations implying continuity with the Crown had to include a bold disclaimer stating they were not affiliated with the British monarchy or the sovereign grant. These rules were retroactive, applying to all living former working royals, closing loopholes that had previously allowed ambiguity. The spotlight, however, remained on Meghan Markle's continued use of the Duchess of Sussex title in media materials, online platforms, book covers, podcast episodes, and branded merchandise. While the title had been ceremonially granted upon her marriage by Queen Elizabeth II, it was no longer sanctioned for operational use. Prince William had made this distinction emphatically in his public remarks, stressing that titles bestowed within the Crown were not trade assets, shields for profit, or tools for branding. They were symbolic duties held in public trust, a principle carrying both legal and symbolic weight. UK constitutional advisers warned that commercial deployment of a royal title during an active international audit could cross the line from cultural expression into deceptive marketing. The IRS, following up on these concerns, requested records showing Meghan Markle's approval of materials bearing the Duchess title, including contracts where the title may have secured partnerships, book advances, media appearances, or statements to donors implying active royal association. A May 2024 memo from the Royal Household's Brand Protection Unit explicitly warned that continued use of royal titles without institutional affiliation could constitute reputational misrepresentation and provide grounds for civil review under UK trademark law. During a closed-door meeting at Clarence House on February 16th, Prince William and IRS official Peter Halloran reviewed the misuse of symbols, misleading fundraising tactics, and repeated public references by Meghan to royal legacy. William personally displayed side-by-side visuals comparing as-ever packaging with official royal Christmas gift boxes from previous years, highlighting the deliberate mimicry of design cues. He presented archived transcripts from public appearances showing repeated phrasing such as "a continuation of royal tradition" and "Windsor values." Internal palace warnings sent to the Sussex representatives from late 2021 urged the removal of specific imagery and language from commercial ventures, yet compliance had been partial at best. When Halloran asked whether these practices were considered a reputational risk, William's reply was sharp and unwavering. The harm had already occurred. Donor trust, public perception, and the international understanding of the Crown's integrity were already compromised. The work now was to repair it. Following the summit, the IRS formally acknowledged the royal family's cooperation, publishing a joint compliance memorandum with HM Treasury. While diplomatic in tone, the message was clear. The investigation would proceed solely against Evermark, with the Crown fully cleared of entanglement. Legal and operational pressure mounted rapidly. The AZEVA website quietly went offline on February 18th, citing technical maintenance. Major retailers, including Fortnum and Mason, Harrods International, and Hudson's Bay, suspended distribution agreements. Warehouse operators in New Jersey and Ontario refused further inventory storage, citing unpaid bills and liquidation issues. IRS-backed forensic data revealed more than $23 million worth of unsold stock across North America, including 44,000 jars of Windsor orange marmalade, tied to Meghan's January birthday campaign, which had sold only 26 units in 24 hours. Regulators began referring to the situation as a strategic collapse of credibility, a phrase now echoed across Westminster and Washington alike. The Royal Trust prepared a formal submission to the Privy Council to review the use of royal titles, while legal teams drafted a civil breach claim against Evermark for symbolic exploitation and reputational damage. The IRS coordinated with the Department of Justice to evaluate whether wire fraud or charitable misrepresentation statutes applied to Archewell. Amid the turmoil, Prince William's leadership earned widespread praise for being proactive and constitutionally grounded. His strategy to draw a clear line, rather than simply raise a curtain, redefined how the monarchy confronted modern scandal. The February 16th summit and William's February 11th declaration together crystallized into a full institutional firewall. For the first time in modern history, the royal family took public legal and diplomatic action to assert its constitutional authority, distancing itself from an individual once affiliated with the Crown, but now under intense investigation. Central to this firewall was the doctrine of symbolic neutrality, the principle that the Crown cannot be leveraged for private, political, or commercial interests. This doctrine had been severely tested by the Sussex household's conduct since 2020, but William's intervention marked a turning point. What began as cautious distancing evolved into a legally codified repudiation, with cascading consequences for Meghan Markle's ventures. As ever went dark, major retailers suspended launches, and the cease and desist landed on Evermark's legal desk, demanding immediate removal of any royal-inspired imagery. Multiple charity rating sites updated Archewell's profile to reflect its pending federal audit status. IRS auditors confirmed that over 75% of Archewell's 2024 expenditures were not mission-related, disproportionately aligned with travel, security, and promotional costs tied to Meghan's personal ventures. The phrase, strategic collapse of credibility, now dominated media coverage in both the UK and US. Meghan was no longer merely a former royal or philanthropic figurehead. She faced potential civil penalties, brand implosion, and widespread institutional disavow. The entanglement between, as ever, Archewell and the lingering Sussex title revealed not just mismanagement, but a calculated blending of royal symbolism and personal profit. This conclusion was reinforced by an internal email from a former Archewell executive assistant, now cooperating with federal investigators, which highlighted the selective transparency and post-royal branding strategies employed to maintain donor trust through legacy language. In other words, royal association had become a tool for marketing leverage. Prince William's unwavering stance made it clear that sentimentality had no place in institutional ethics. When asked if he regretted the personal toll on his brother, he replied succinctly, later circulated widely. There was no confusion about duty, only disappointment that circumstances had come to this. This doctrine of dignified firmness is now being hailed as the Windsor model for modern governance. The monarchy did not lash out. It simply stood up, presented documentation, and let the facts carry the weight. Within days, 2 critical processes were launched. The Privy Council began a formal review of the continued use of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex titles, with King Charles giving full consent in principle. Legal advisers prepared briefing papers to determine whether misuse in commercial or non-profit settings could justify suspension or revocation. In parallel, the Royal Trust and the Palace's Constitutional Affairs Office finalised a policy framework, now known as the Civic Clarity Act. This framework was designed to regulate title usage, ban symbolic replication for commercial purposes, and establish clear enforcement protocols for disavows. Though primarily developed in response to the Sussex case, the Civic Clarity Act will serve as a lasting safeguard, ensuring no former royal can exploit institutional language again. The monarchy had drawn a definitive line in history, asserting its authority, protecting its legacy, and setting a precedent for generations to come. Without explicit consent, the global response was immediate and unequivocal. Royal households across Europe quietly observed the UK's decisive handling of institutional risk, with senior officials in Sweden and Denmark privately commending the approach taken by the British monarchy. In the United States, the IRS issued a public statement expressing sincere appreciation for the royal household's transparency, candor, and meticulous documentation. The Wall Street Journal captured the tone of the moment in a striking headline, "The Crown is not for sale. How William quietly reinforced a royal firewall." The symbolic line was now law, and the royal family was not simply defending its name, it was defending the very meaning of service in a modern era as the investigation into the Archewell Foundation deepened. Ripple effects spread quickly through non-profit, political, and royal circles. What began as a quiet audit of financial irregularities had grown into an international reckoning over the blurred lines between personal branding and public duty. Prince William's disavow, delivered publicly on February 11th and operationalised through legal channels in the days that followed, had already made measurable impact. Sources at the UK Charity Commission and the IRS's International Compliance Desk confirmed. A transatlantic task force has now been established to scrutinise the structural legitimacy of Archewell's fiscal sponsorship arrangement, examining whether the foundation knowingly leveraged royal identity to solicit donations under a false impression of credibility. Central to the legal case is Cowell's quiet transition in June 2025 into a fiscal sponsorship model, while the arrangement is not inherently illegal, allowing smaller non-profits to operate under the tax-exempt umbrella of larger organisations. It was ill-suited for a globally recognised entity tied to a former royal household. IRS documents flagged the timing as suspicious, coinciding precisely with mounting media questions about financial opacity and declining grant disbursements. The change effectively shielded Archewell from filing detailed IRS Form 990s, drastically reducing public visibility into its spending patterns. One line from the IRS audit summary was particularly damning. This restructuring appears deliberately timed to avoid scrutiny. Public concerns had already been growing, as Archewell's own reports revealed a decline in donor trust, falling from $13 million in 2021 to just over $2.1 million in 2024. Meanwhile, administrative overhead had risen sharply, leaving actual charitable grants below 25% of total expenditures. Inside the palace, senior courtiers acted with urgency. The Royal Communications Code was revised to include mandatory disclaimers for all external engagements by non-working royals. A digital registry was established to track unauthorized commercial and online use of monarchical terminology, monitoring phrases like Crown Royal Standard and Windsor Legacy. The Privy Council's Legal Advisory Board received recommendations from the Royal Trust, asserting that continued use of the Sussex titles in connection with deceptive charitable appeals could constitute a breach of public trust through symbolic manipulation. One palace source noted, it was not merely misuse, but the methodical persistence in leveraging Crown-associated language to validate private ventures, a practice that erodes public confidence in the meaning of service. If left unchecked, the palace warned, the constitutional credibility of the monarchy itself could begin to weaken. For Meghan Markle, the financial and legal stakes escalated rapidly. Internal leaks from multiple warehouse facilities revealed over $23 million in unsold inventory for her as Everbrand. Wholesale agreements collapsed, and the possibility of civil penalties under Title 26 of the U.S. Code for Tax Fraud and False Reporting, Title 18 for Wire Fraud and Misrepresentation, and California non-profit statutes loomed large. Potential consequences included civil forfeiture of misused funds, revocation of Archewell's non-profit status, public disclosure of internal communications, brand blacklisting by major retailers, and federal audit scrutiny. The California Attorney General reopened a dormant 2023 compliance inquiry, citing new evidence suggesting false claims in state-level filings. On February 20th, the royal household is expected to present a formal petition to the Privy Council requesting a review of the Sussex titles. Constitutional experts confirm that the Crown holds the authority to suspend or revoke peerages if continued use poses reputational, legal, or institutional risk. While the process is delicate, King Charles has already reviewed draft language for the revocation order and supports the action in principle. If statutory misuse is confirmed, it would mark a historic first in the modern royal era, a post-abdication royal formally stripped of titles for violations of symbolic neutrality and financial integrity. Prince William has consistently emphasized that the Crown must remain above commerce. Its service must never be confused with personal enterprise. His words now stand as the guiding line between Crown and chaos. The firewall is not theoretical. It has been tested, fortified, and made operational. William's intervention is a constitutional watermark, permanently reshaping the relationship between monarchy, media, and monetization. Legal, symbolic, and institutional standards now converge, setting a precedent for generations to come. Within days of the Clarence House summit, the Privy Council convened a subcommittee to assess the legality and implications of potentially stripping the Duke and Duchess of Sussex of their titles. The focus was on the sustained misuse of noble titles in connection with private enrichment and deceptive fundraising. Legal advisers drew parallels to the 1917 Titles Deprivation Act, originally applied during wartime, but now serving as precedent for safeguarding constitutional integrity in peacetime scandals. While the Act itself may not be directly invoked, its principle that titles must reflect national duty informs current deliberations. A senior aide to Prince William described the palace's stance as protective rather than political, emphasizing the need to shield the monarchy from reputational erosion, legal ambiguity, and misuse of inherited symbolism. King Charles, while maintaining public distance from the process, has indicated no objection in principle, with a final ruling expected by March 2026. Meanwhile, Archewell's operational future grows increasingly bleak. IRS officials warn the foundation could permanently lose its 501c3 status. Misallocated funds, particularly for private security, travel, or PR, may be subject to civil fraud penalties up to 75%. Documents once obscured under fiscal sponsorship could be subpoenaed in fraud proceedings, while watchdog organizations like Charity Watch and ProPublica prepared joint investigations into the failures of celebrity philanthropy exemplified by Archewell. Meghan Markle's As Ever brand faces commercial liquidation. Retail contracts have been terminated, and inventory write-offs are projected to trigger substantial financial losses. For Prince William, this saga has become a crucible, reinforcing the moral architecture of the monarchy and clarifying what royal identity can and cannot be. The revised statement of institutional separation, signed by William and the Lord Chamberlain, now guides all royal-affiliated charities and post-royal ventures, with its 3 core pillars distributed to Commonwealth jurisdictions, embassies, and media licensing boards. No title without duty, no symbol without sanction, no affiliation without fact. In private, William is reported to have said to The Times, "The world must know there is a line. Not every name carries meaning, but ours must carry the truth." That clarity has become the monarchy's shield. In the final analysis, this has never been just about taxes, titles, or charitable mismanagement. It is about the very essence of public service and whether inherited legitimacy can be sold, shaped, or spun without consequence. By stepping forward with documentation, discipline, and unwavering dignity, Prince William has realigned the monarchy's compass. He has shown that the crown will never be leveraged and that royalty stripped of ethics is no more than costume. The fallout may continue in courtrooms and boardrooms, but for the House of Windsor, a line has been drawn. And for the world watching, one message now echoes from Marlborough House to Washington: the crown is not for sale, and no one, not even a duchess, is above its duty. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more royal revelations and behind-the-scenes updates.